This is the Small Town Big Talk Show, the only place where you can listen in on real-life conversations about the challenges and the joys of living in a small town. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week a guest will join me as we tackle one topic that more than likely we're all feeling or have thought about, but of course, no one wants to talk about. Let's chat. All right, so Lila Harstad, I'm so excited to be sitting down with you.
Well, I'm excited to be sitting down with you too. I want to say thank you for coming to rugby. We had just a wonderful time when you were there talking about being big in a small town, and you gave a lot of us a lot of inspiration. And looking back at the picture that we had taken that day of You Are Beautiful behind the Main Street boutique, oh my goodness, you inspired many of us.
Oh, thank you. And I feel equally honored to have been there. That picture is actually going to end up living on my website. I'm going to put it on my website because it's just such a beautiful representation of what can happen when women come together and just invest in themselves. So I was thrilled to be a part of that day. What a great day.
It was great.
So the reason you and I are sitting down is because you own the radio station there in Rugby. And that day you had done a quick interview and I just started quickly chatting with you. And I said, you've got to come on my talk show. And you thankfully said yes. You didn't turn me down, even though we were just talking about how video is not normally how you have to show up for people. So thank you for saying yes to coming on.
You're welcome. I'm used to telling people, oh, don't worry, I won't ask you anything you don't know the question to, and don't be nervous. And yeah, being on the other end of it is different.
I know, I get it. So thank you for doing it. So how about you share a little bit with the listeners and watchers about your story? You know, the fact that you own a radio station, talk maybe a little bit about how uncommon that actually is, given the fact that you're the only one for quite some distance. So please share that and just how you came to be in this business.
Sure. My background actually is in home ec education and communication. I have a degree from North Dakota State University and worked with 4-H and the NDSU Extension Service in Minnesota. And then came back to Minot. I'm originally from Minot, North Dakota. So yes, I am a transplant to rugby too. And decided that I wanted to do something different and was interviewed for a position in sales and didn't really think I wanted to do sales or I was good at sales. But when you take a look at the definition of what sales really is, other than the used car salesman that we all think of, it's
right.
Really just helping other people. And that's what really intrigued me about radio was, especially in rugby, we have probably per capita the most women-owned businesses of any community in North Dakota. So it's been fun over these last 20 years to just help other businesses and particularly women grow. And that's what the radio station was able to do. We do it we call it relationship selling, or we do a needs analysis with the businesses. So we ask them to share information about their business and then design a marketing campaign to help them. So it's just been fun to be able to work with people like Ashley at Main Street Boutique to help her make her business successful. So that's kind of how I started. I became the manager in '99, and then I've owned the station since '01, and happened to be one of the only sole female owners of a radio station in North and South Dakota. And I think there's only one in Minnesota. So it is a male-dominated industry. But I think in small town, it doesn't matter. If you like what you do and you're passionate about what you do, it doesn't matter what gender you are, what sex you are, or what race you are. Go for it. The definition I always say of an entrepreneur is a risk taker. And I guess that's what I am. It just became part of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to work with people. And it's just a challenge every day. It's different every day. I guess it's just, being part of a small town, you get to do everything.
Right.
And you work with the chamber and we work with the chamber too. And I always think, we are event organizers too, whether it's the event that you were at, we helped organize or promote that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a one that we help promote. I do an egg show that we help promote. So, I mean, it's really in everybody's best interest to team with us too, because we can get the message out. And there aren't very many radio stations in small rural America. So that's what's kind of fun too, is that a lot of, just like farming, a lot of businesses have gotten bigger and bigger, and just because you get bigger doesn't necessarily mean you're better. And I think that's what happened in radio too, is, you know, a lot of the stations have been bought up by big corporations, and to stay a local relevant radio station, local radio station, has been important, especially for us in our area. People want to know what the local news is. They want to know what the local weather is. Sports is a really big deal, so we always cover all of the sporting events, and it's just fun to be part of the community and help people get the information out.
Right. So there's a couple things you touched on that I'd love to circle back to. So you had said that, you know, in a small, it doesn't matter in a small town if you're a man or a woman or whatever your race might be, but there are a lot of people that might be watching this that are like, well, maybe, you know, it's not necessarily that a radio station might be on their radar for what they want to do, but did you have moments where people told you that it wasn't going to work, that there was no way you were going to make this happen? And if so, how did you deal with that? How did you move through that?
Yes, you're right. There was even, you know, financial institutions that at one time had said to me, you know, you just need to find somebody I'm divorced. And so it was right after the divorce. He said, you just need to find somebody to get married to and have them take care of you. Whoa, you know, I mean, you know, that was 20 years ago. You can't say those things now, but I guess that just
20 years ago doesn't seem that long ago to me, Lila. It doesn't, that would come out of someone's mouth. I mean, I'm not surprised, because there's a bit of that mentality, you know, I mean, it's a residual mentality that I hope is leaving, but yeah. So then what did you do, or how did you handle that?
So I think it's just that resilience that, no, don't tell me no. When you tell me no, I'll figure out a way that, yes, I can turn it around and make it a yes. And even before that, you know, when I was with the Extension Service, which would have been, I suppose, 40 years ago, one of the things that happened, or one of the reasons I quit, I think, was, looking back on it, was way back then we called it the queen bee syndrome. So that women felt like the only way they could get ahead was to put other women down. And that was hard to see that and experience that. And I thought, that doesn't make sense. I don't want to be part of this. You know, let's encourage each other. And so, you know, after that experience, I think I learned I'm going to do whatever I can to help anybody, because that's what this life is all about, I think, is helping others. And we as women have a really good background for that, because we already have been caregivers and caretakers and taking care of others and making sure everybody's okay. And those are really good qualities to have, whether you're in government positions or leadership positions or running your own business. That's what's most important, I think.
Right. So what other challenges do you feel like you have faced along the way?
I think some of it, like all small businesses, is finding good employees and keeping good employees.
Right.
And, you know, when you first start out, you think, oh, I can do this, and I have all these people, or have all these people in mind. Well, no matter what community you're in, I think everybody's looking for good people. So I think what I've learned there is, if you get good employees, treat them right, make them part of the system. You know, we have a profit sharing as part of the radio station.
Oh, cool.
Make sure that they feel like they're valued. And I really have a hard time with that sometimes too, because it's like I say, I give you a job to do, I expect you to do it. I'm not going to micromanage you.
Right.
You know, go on. But you do need to say the thank yous. You do need to make sure that you give them the attaboys. And I really work on that diligently to try to make sure that I do those kinds of things. But yeah, I think when the challenge in any community, or small towns especially, is finding those people. But when you find them, nurture them, you know, pay them well, you know, whatever you can do to make sure that they stay.
Right. I think employment, labor shortage is a major problem for most small communities. So
I have 5 full-time people and 5 part-time people. And so what I've found is, you know, we've got people like a retired high school counselor. I've got somebody that used to be a funeral director. That was a really big sports enthusiast while he used to live here, and he came back. You know, I have somebody that used to own their own business and I was on the verge of retirement, but just thought it would be fun to be on the radio. I hired a couple of high school kids that have some disabilities, but, you know, are able to get through them, you know, working with us. So I think you need to look outside the box. There are retired teachers or retired or farm wives. I mean, I just think that you need to look outside the box and find part-time positions. Maybe somebody shares a position with somebody else, you know?
Right. Right. That's some really good strategies, honestly, because I just think we are in a different time, unfortunately, and none of us can offer benefits, you know, or hardly. Doing that is a really big challenge for your full-time position. So to get creative about it is really smart.
I remember one of the gals I hired had come from a casino where she was a marketing manager at the casino. So of course they get really big salaries and really big benefits and all those kinds of things. And she came to me and she said, well, what is it that you have to offer me? And I said, we get to go to the movies free. We have free movie passes. And she was like, are you kidding me? But she ended up working for me and then now started her own business. But yeah, you know, just little things like that. Or I say, you know, no, we don't have a lot to offer, but what I do have to offer is flexibility. You know, if your kid has a basketball game coming up, that's what's most important. If you're not feeling well, don't come in today. And I haven't had anybody take advantage of that. So I think the flexibility is something that you can offer that you forget that you can do. And
is a benefit.
It means a lot to people.
Right. You may forget how important that is to be able to offer that kind of flexibility. I was going to say, any other things that stand out in your mind about being a transplant? You know, any specific hurdles that you felt like you faced? Because that's something I always say as a returner to my hometown. I can't really imagine. I mean, I've moved to other communities, but they were always large communities. You know, I was never a transplant to a small town. So, you know, were there any specific things that you remember, especially maybe like just starting out or when you were looking at buying the station, you know, that were specific to you because you were not from there?
Yeah, you're right. And it's funny because I think in small towns we all say, oh, we're so friendly. We're so friendly. And
we
yes,
do.
We are to a certain extent. You know, you're an outsider. Oh, they aren't quite so sure. They're friendly to a point. And I need to remember that because I'm to the point now where somebody the other day said, well, you're originally from Rugby, aren't you? Wow. I don't know if I want to take that as a compliment or not, but no, I've been here long enough now that I think they do think, but no, coming from Minot and going to school in Fargo, living in Duluth, Minnesota, yes, coming to Rugby was a challenge, I guess, because you're right, you don't know everybody knows you, and yet they act, yes, they're always very friendly and open, but on their terms maybe, and I don't know how to say that differently other than just to be aware of it, that sometimes maybe even in your podcast last night, you talked about, you know, we do this, I'm really interested in you or I want to pray for you, but what we really are thinking about is what's the gossip, because it's so hard in small towns to not get caught up in that. Mm-hmm. No, be careful of who your circle is, like you said, or who your little nesters are.
Right.
And then don't get caught up in that. If it's not factual, don't talk about it, you know, move on. And to just be aware of that. I think in small towns, it's really hard to not be part of it, but.
Right. Well, I would guess in your line of work, it's even more challenging in some respects because you're looking for stories, you're looking for news. And sometimes in small towns, news is who's divorcing who. And, you know, I mean, sometimes news is literally the personal stuff in people's lives, which isn't news and shouldn't be broadcast on the radio. But at the same time, you know, I would guess that that's kind of been a tricky balance for you at times.
I'm really fortunate that I have a news director that also came from a small town in South Dakota and then was in Langdon and then now has been here 15 years. And
Cool.
his philosophy was really close to mine in that, no, in the big picture, yes, in the big industries, bad news sells. That isn't what we're all about. We really try to focus on good news, good
Right.
things that are happening. You know, we have a series that we call the Good News Minute, where we interview people that are new in town or have new businesses. The JDA director, the library director, the mayor all come in and give their reports, and it's always trying to say, you know, what's new, what's going on that's happening that's good in rugby. And I guess we don't say it that way, but that's what we've always tried to push and promote.
Well, there's a lot to be said for the intention that you have behind things. You know, you don't have to overtly say it if it's clearly what's coming through, you know? And you're right, it is kind of depressing at times because, you know, if all we did was look at the national media, we wouldn't feel a lot of hope for much. At least I don't feel. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, you know, sometimes my little sister is still in Minot and she'll come through and she'll listen to the radio station and one of the first times she said, oh my goodness, I can't believe the things you talk about on the radio. You talk about who's in the hospital, who has died, what the lunch menu is at the school. You know, it's like, yes, those are what's important in small town.
Right.
And we even have a lot of snowbirds that take us with them because everything is streaming now and on the internet. They listen to us religiously in the morning so they can hear what's going on in rugby and know what's happening and who's doing what and whose fundraiser is and what the kids are doing at school. We do school reports. We do, yeah, like I said, the food and fun guide talks about, you know, what menus are at the local restaurants and what bands are playing at the different nightclubs. So yeah, it's like, that's what small town news is all about.
absolutely. So at what point do you feel like this really became your passion? Because I think the one thing that's also interesting about you and your story is that you are now doing something in a very meaningful way. You own the station, not even remotely connected to what you went to school for. And I think a lot of times, all of us, women, men, doesn't matter, we get really tied to what we went to school for because we paid for it, and it feels like you're wasting it or squandering it somehow if you don't use it. What's your philosophy on that? And, you know, at what point do you feel like you fell in love with radio enough to want to make it your thing?
I guess when you start in the radio industry, it's something that just hooks you. It's an unusual industry. When you're on the other side, on the radio, on air, it kind of gets to be like you're a celebrity. You know, everybody knows you, everybody hears your voice. You get to be the big fish in the little pond. And so when you're in a small market, yeah, that's really attractive. I came into the radio industry on the other side from sales, which is unusual that an owner or a manager comes in from sales. They usually come in from the other direction of on-air production. So
Sure.
I guess that's just unusual that I came up that direction. And I do have to be on the air once in a while, and I always tell the guys, oh, this is just not my passion, and I really appreciate what you guys do, because, you know, you think, well, how hard can this be? You sit there and you listen to music and you push a button and you play another song and you talk about the weather, and this is just a piece of cake. Oh my goodness, 20 years ago, the first time I had to do it, one of our nighttime people left. I had something going on, and so I had to do it. I actually tape recorded myself. Oh, there was so much dead air. That red light came on and it was like, I didn't know what to say. So the 4-hour shifts that you have is really mind numbing, if you
Sure.
But yet it's really challenging and fun. You know, like one of my sports guys says, I can't believe I get paid to listen to music and watch ball games. You know, which is what he does. He just play and listens to music. But if you're really good at it, yes, there's the timing, making sure that you're segueing between the songs and playing the right commercials. And yeah, there's a lot behind the scenes that goes into it. So I guess, yeah, radio kind of hooks you once you've started in the industry. You really follow it, and it just is in your blood.
Right.
I started selling radio in Minot, And then when the opportunity came up to do something here in rugby, it was like, oh yeah, I do like that industry. I do like being part of that industry.
So what's really cool about you then too is that you not only are a woman, which is uncommon in the industry, but how you progressed is unusual. So when that happened, did you have anybody in your life that was saying, what? This is what you're going to do? And like, what about your home ec degree? Did anybody ever say that to you?
Yes and no, maybe. I guess, yes, you always think, oh gosh, like you said, you maybe are wasting your 4-year education, and why are you doing that? But I think any education that you have isn't wasted. And there are lots of things that you still learn from that 4-year degree that you have, just that you've actually finished it or completed it. Sometimes it doesn't even matter what your 4-year degree is in. It's just that you've started something and completed it. So I don't think you ever feel like you've wasted it because you are doing something different than what you were originally started out as.
Right.
You know, I still too, all of your jobs, I feel like mine, have stacked upon each other and worked toward where I am now. You know, working with the agricultural industry in the 4-H in Duluth, Minnesota, you know, gave me an understanding of the agricultural market and, you know, where we are here in rugby. It's important that you talk about the ag programs and talk about what's important in the farming industry, and that it all ties together. You know, the retailers need to make sure, I mean, the farmers buy from the retailers, you know, work with the farmers. I mean, it all works together.
Right. Yeah, I love that approach too. And when I think again about the women or the people that might watch the episode, I want them to know that nothing is ever wasted if you learned from it.
Absolutely.
Even in college, everything we do, even if we hated the class, maybe we met somebody that we wouldn't have met otherwise. It's just every single thing that happens to us, it shapes us and it helps us grow. And we just have to choose to see it that way. It's all about the way that we look at it, that we frame it. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. You know, and I have a young man that has just 1 year of education under his belt now, and he's just working with me for me for the summertime. And part of me wants to say, you don't need to go back. I'll hire you full time right now. And then I think, no, he needs to, if he wants to, he needs to finish his degree, and I'll be patient and wait for him. But
right.
Yeah, you know, and you know, with my own kids, sometimes a 4-year degree isn't for everybody. Sometimes the 2-year degrees. Sometimes it's just the life lessons that you learn along the way. They both are in the National Guard. Oh my goodness, after they had done their basic training for that 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it was, I thought every high school kid should have to do this. They learned so much from that, just the being away from home, being with other people, learning teamwork, learning to be on your own. I mean, there's just so many things that you learn in basic training or in college, or whatever it is that you do after high school. And it's okay to still stay here, because yes, we have a lot of people in rugby that have stayed here, and great. But yes, there are a lot of people that graduated from here, left, and have now come back. We have a program that we started on the FM, and the FM went on 3 years ago, called Welcome Back. And so the furniture store, St. Michael Furniture, sponsored it, or it was his idea. And I said, great idea, you can sponsor it. So what we're doing is interviewing people that have graduated from rugby, left, and came back. And it's called Welcome Back. So we ask them, you know, the year you graduated, what kinds of things you remember growing up, you know, where did you do after you left, and what are you doing now that you're back? So we've been running the program 3 years, and there have been very few times we've rerun the same person. So there are just a lot of people that are coming back, and especially in that millennial age group, you know, they come back, they want to have their kids growing up here. There's a whole group of them that now all of their kids are playing together, and oh, that's exciting that they've chosen to come back.
I love that you're focusing on that, Lila, at your radio station, because that's something that I don't think we are, I don't think my community is, and I think a lot of communities aren't focused on it as much as we could be and should be. You know, encouraging people that there are businesses for sale or houses for sale, that there's opportunities back in your hometown.
Yes. And I think the other thing that really opened my eyes after you being here is you sometimes forget everything that you have. And so it takes an outsider to come in and go, wow, you can get coffee at 6:30 in the morning at a drive-through in Rugby?
Right.
Yes, we can. And you have all of these cool little shops downtown? Yes, we do. And you
Right.
forget things that you have, the walking path, the hospital, the schools. I mean, there's just so many things that we have that we forget until somebody comes in from outside and goes, yes, we do have all of those things.
Right. I love that you pointed that out too. It's one of my favorite things about the work that I get to do is to be that reminder, because I really do come into your community with a fresh set of eyes. And then to get to stand on stage and look at all of you and say, you've got to go on with me and mean it is a really fun thing to get to do.
It is. Yeah, we appreciate it.
It was such a fun day. I've raved about rugby kind of like a crazy person. So it's been really fun. So before we go here, I have one kind of final question for you. And I would ask you this: how are you personally living in rugby? What does that look like for you?
It cut out here. Hang on.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. Say it again.
Okay, so one final question for you before we go. How are you personally living big in rugby? What does that look like for you? Whether it's your job or how you interface with the community, what does living big in rugby look like to you?
I think living big for me is being a cheerleader for rugby, being a cheerleader for the businesses. Wherever I go, I always say, I'm from Rugby, North Dakota, the geographical center of North America. That's trivia you won't forget now, right?
Right.
We have it on Congo. We have it, when I'm part of it's called Radio Group 20. There are 20 radio stations that get together for training 2 times a year. And they all know me as geographical center. So yes, I think I'm living big because I promote rugby. I believe in rugby. I believe that we have a lot going for ourselves, and I truly believe that whatever I can do to help the businesses or the retailers and the businesses in town, if they're successful, I'm successful.
Yeah, it's very cool. You guys, the passion that you have for your community that's really important. All of us need to remember that. Instead of answering, like, what do you do around here? By saying nothing, there's nothing to do here. And instead really thinking about how we talk about where we live and that we need to show that pride. Because no one else can do it for us. We are our best ambassadors, best hope for having ambassadors, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Lila, for coming on. You are such a cool lady. The work that you're doing, the way that you approach it, it's really something. And I'm really grateful to have you on.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This was fun.
So you're a transplant, living in a small town that wasn't originally yours, and you are constantly reminded that you are not one of them. And you're wondering when you're going to stop feeling like an outsider. Grab your copy of the Small Town Survival Kit. It was designed just for you as a transplant, and it will help you feel less lonely, less isolated, and a little bit more inspired while you're waiting for the acceptance of who you are as a person to come around.